One modern jet fighter deleted the eyes of World War I in under 4 minutes. A Swedish Gripen C dove through the morning fog over Ypres in April 1917, locked 8 observation balloons with radar, and fired a single infrared missile at the first rope line. The balloon erupted at 1,000 meters. 7 more followed in 3 passes. Every artillery spotter along a 12-kilometer front went blind before the crews on the ground heard the engine. World War I didn't run on tanks or trenches. It ran on eyes. Observation balloons floated above every major line, tethered by steel cables, watching troop movements and directing artillery fire. Spotters in wicker baskets radioed corrections to gun crews 10 kilometers back. One balloon could guide a battery onto a target in minutes. Without balloons, artillery fired blind, wasting shells, missing concentrations and losing battles. The entire system depended on slow, fragile platforms, hanging in predictable spots at low altitude. They were the brain of the war, and they had no defense against something traveling at Mach 1.6. The Gripen C carries 6 missiles and a 27mm cannon with 500 rounds. It climbs to 15,000 meters in under 2 minutes. Its radar tracks dozens of targets at 40 kilometers. In 1917, the fastest fighter, the Spad III, flew at 220 kilometers per hour. The Gripen cruises at 900 without afterburner. A World War I pilot wouldn't see it. He'd see his wingman explode, then nothing. Here's what happened on that first sortie. The jet crossed into French airspace at dawn, flying at 8,000 meters. The pilot's radar screen lit up with returns. Observation balloons clustered along the Ypres salient, German Gotha bombers heading south toward Amiens, and a scattered formation of Albatros fighters escorting them. The pilot ignored the fighters. They couldn't catch him. He rolled onto the balloon line first. He fired one AIM-9X Sidewinder from 6 kilometers out. The missile's infrared seeker locked onto the hydrogen-filled envelope and struck in 11 seconds. The balloon tore apart. Fire dropped onto the field below. The second balloon's crew saw the flash and started winching down, too slow. The Gripen closed to 2 kilometers, switched to guns, and put a 2-second burst through the envelope. 400 rounds per second. The balloon folded and fell. 6 more balloons died in the next 90 seconds. 3 with missiles, 3 with gun passes. The entire network along that sector disappeared before the German anti-aircraft guns even trained onto the jet's contrail. Then the pilot turned toward the bomber formation. The Gothas flew at 130 kilometers per hour in a tight group. No radar, no warning systems, no idea a fighter was 15 kilometers behind them. The Gripen fired 2 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles from beyond visual range. Both tracked, both hit. 2 bombers dropped out of formation. The remaining Gothas scattered. The Albatros escorts dove, looking for the attacker. They never found it. The Gripen was already 10 kilometers north, climbing back to altitude, fuel gauge dropping. 4 minutes of combat, 8 balloons destroyed. 2 bombers down, 0 losses. But here's the part that mattered more than the kills. The artillery behind those balloons stopped firing accurately. Batteries that had been hammering French positions all morning switched to pre-planned barrages. Blind shots based on maps, not live spotting. Effectiveness dropped by 60%. Infantry attacks that should have been shredded by coordinated fire made it across no man's land. 1 jet, 1 sortie, and the entire front shifted. But that fuel gauge told a different story. The Gripen burned through 2,000 kilograms of jet fuel in 30 minutes. It needed JP-8 or Jet A1, refined kerosene with specific additives. World War I produced kerosene for lamps, not turbines. Contamination could destroy the engine in hours. The kills before visual contact changed everything. Most dogfights in World War I happened at ranges under 200 meters. Pilots saw the enemy, maneuvered for position, and fired machine guns in bursts of 3 to 5 seconds. The Gripen killed from distances where World War I pilots couldn't even see the horizon clearly. Radar gave it a picture of the sky 40 kilometers out. The AIM-120 missile reached 30 kilometers. A formation of German reconnaissance planes never knew they were targeted until the first aircraft exploded. Here's how the second sortie unfolded. The Gripen took off at noon from a grass strip near Arras, barely 700 meters long, rough enough to risk foreign object damage to the engine intakes. The pilot climbed to 12,000 meters and turned east. His mission: break a German reconnaissance sweep heading toward British lines. Intelligence reported 6 Rumpler C-types flying in a loose line, escorted by 4 Fokker D-7 fighters. Standard practice. The Rumplers carried cameras and would map trench positions for the next offensive. The Fokkers flew above and behind, watching for Allied fighters. The Gripen's radar picked up the formation at 38 kilometers. 10 targets, all below 3,000 meters, speeds under 200 kilometers per hour. The pilot selected 2 Rumplers at the front of the line and fired 2 AIM-120s 8 seconds apart. Time to impact 42 seconds. The Fokker pilots saw nothing. No engine noise, no contrail at their altitude. Just 2 of their reconnaissance planes disintegrating mid-flight. Debris fell across a kilometer of empty farmland. The formation broke immediately. The remaining Rumplers scattered south and west, diving for cloud cover. The Fokkers climbed and turned, searching for the attacker. They never found it. The Gripen was already 16 kilometers north, descending through 8,000 meters at 600 kilometers per hour, lining up a gun pass on a straggling Rumpler. The pilot closed to 1,000 meters, fired a 3-second burst, and pulled up. 50 rounds hit the tail and fuselage. The Rumpler's engine quit, and the aircraft spun into a field near Cambrai. 3 reconnaissance planes destroyed in under 2 minutes. The remaining Rumplers turned back toward German lines without completing their photo run. No trench maps, no targeting data for the artillery. The planned offensive lost its eyes before it started, but the Fokker pilots reported something new. An invisible killer that struck from above the clouds and disappeared before anyone could react. German squadrons along the front changed tactics within hours. They stopped flying in tight formations. They stayed lower, used more cloud cover, and spread out across wider areas. Efficiency dropped, fewer missions succeeded. Fear did more than bullets. But back at the grass strip, the ground crew saw the real problem. The Gripen's fuel tanks were half empty after a 35-minute flight. They had no fuel truck, no filtration system, and no spare parts. They'd filled the tanks that morning with kerosene meant for lamps, strained through cloth filters. It worked once, maybe twice. After that, the engine would clog or fail. The jet had maybe 2 more sorties before it became a very fast, very expensive static display. The 3rd sortie never happened. The engine wouldn't start. A turbine blade had picked up debris during the last takeoff. A pebble kicked up from the grass strip, sucked into the intake at 400 kilometers per hour and slammed into the compressor. The blade cracked. The entire engine was compromised. In 2025, the ground crew would swap the engine in 6 hours with the right tools and a replacement turbofan. In 1917, they had wrenches, hope, and no spare parts. The Gripen sat silent on the field for 3 days while mechanics tried to clean the fuel system and inspect damage they couldn't fix. This is where the fantasy crashed into physics. The jet didn't lose to enemy fighters. It lost to fuel, dirt, and supply chains. Modern fighter jets need specific things to keep flying, and none of them existed in World War I. JP-8 jet fuel is refined kerosene with additives that prevent icing, reduce corrosion, and keep combustion clean at high altitude. World War I kerosene was made for lamps. It burned dirty. It left deposits. It clogged injectors and fouled turbine blades after a few flight hours. Even if you filtered it perfectly, the chemistry was wrong. Then there's the runway problem. The Gripen C is designed for rough field operations. It can take off from reinforced roads in under 600 meters. But grass strips in 1917 weren't reinforced. They were mud in winter, dust in summer, and full of stones, roots, and ruts. Every takeoff risked foreign object damage. One rock in the intake could end the jet's war permanently. Modern jets also need clean air filters. hydraulic fluid, engine oil that works at extreme temperatures, and tires rated for high-speed landings. None of that was available a century ago. Even basic maintenance became impossible. Turbofan engines have thousands of precision parts operating at temperatures above 1,000 degrees Celsius. A single cracked blade throws the entire rotor out of balance. The engine vibrates, efficiency drops, and catastrophic failure follows. In the modern Air Force, sensors alert the crew, and logistics delivers a replacement engine within hours. In 1917, the pilot would feel the vibration, land if he could, and watch his superweapon turn into scrap metal. Here's the cold math. The Gripen carried enough internal fuel for about 90 minutes of flight time, including combat. That's 2 or 3 sorties per day if you refuel fast and keep missions short. But without proper fuel, you get maybe 6 to 8 flights total before engine damage grounds the aircraft. That's 48 to 96 hours of tactical dominance. After that, you have a non-flying monument to what could have been. The Swedes designed the Gripen for exactly this kind of scenario. Dispersed operations with small crews and minimal infrastructure. A trained team of 6 can rearm and refuel the jet in under 10 minutes on a highway strip. But that assumes you have missiles, cannon rounds, the right fuel, and a paved surface. Take any of those away and the system breaks. World War I had none of them. The jet could shock the front for 2 days, maybe 4 if the crew was lucky and the weather held. Then it would sit silent, out of fuel, out of parts, and out of war. So the crew adapted. They couldn't fix the fuel or grow a supply chain, but they could change how they used the jet. Instead of long patrols, they planned short surgical strikes, 2 sorties per day, 20 minutes each, targeting only the highest value threats. They moved operations to a flat section of road near Lens, paved with cobblestone a decade earlier and just barely long enough for a rolling takeoff. It wasn't ideal. The Gripen needed smooth pavement and 600 meters minimum. The road gave them 700 meters of uneven stone with a drainage ditch on one side. But it beat the grass strip and cut foreign object damage by half. The new mission profile was brutal in its simplicity. Observation balloons first always. Kill the eyes and the artillery goes blind. Second priority, reconnaissance aircraft carrying cameras. Third, bombers heading towards supply depots or troop concentrations. Fighters only if they got in the way. Every target had to justify burning fuel and risking the engine. No patrols, no showing off, no dogfights for pride. The jet had maybe 6 flights left. Every sortie had to break something important. Sortie 4 launched at dawn. The Gripen climbed to 10,000 meters, radar scanning a 15-kilometer radius. The pilot spotted 3 observation balloons over German lines near Vimy Ridge. He fired one AIM-9X at the farthest balloon from 8 kilometers out, then dove toward the remaining 2 at 600 kilometers per hour. Gun passes 2 seconds each. Both balloons shredded and fell. Total flight time 18 minutes, 3 balloons destroyed. German artillery lost correction along a critical sector, and a French infantry push that morning took an extra 300 meters of trench without taking the expected casualties. The jet landed on the cobblestone road, taxied to a hidden clearing, and shut down while the crew hand-pumped strained kerosene into the tanks. Sortie 5 targeted a German reconnaissance flight, mapping new British positions south of Arras. The Gripen intercepted at 28 kilometers, fired 2 AIM-120s, and destroyed both reconnaissance planes before their pilots saw anything. The escort fighters scattered, the mission aborted. No maps reached German headquarters. No updated intelligence for the next offensive. The British gained 48 hours of operational surprise. Flight time, 16 minutes. By Sortie 6, the tactics had evolved into a system. Take off before dawn or at dusk to avoid detection. Climb fast, scan wide, prioritize balloons and reconnaissance. Engage at range when possible. Use guns only when necessary. Stay above 3,000 meters to avoid small arms fire. Never loiter. Land fast, hide the jet, refuel by hand, and wait for the next high-value target. The crew treated the Gripen like a sniper rifle, not a machine gun. One shot, one kill, then disappear. The impact was localized but devastating. Along a 30-kilometer front, German observation and reconnaissance effectiveness dropped by 70% in 4 days. Artillery barrages became less accurate. Infantry attacks lost their spotting support. Bomber runs got intercepted before reaching their targets. The jet didn't win the war. It didn't even change the overall strategic picture. But it created a bubble of air superiority so absolute that ground operations inside that bubble shifted in favor of the Allies. The jet flew 8 sorties total before the engine failed permanently. 14 observation balloons destroyed, 9 reconnaissance aircraft shot down, 4 bombers intercepted, 0 losses. In 10 days, 1 Gripen C with a 6-person ground crew and no supply chain created a 20-kilometer bubble where German air operations effectively stopped. Artillery accuracy inside that zone dropped 68%. Reconnaissance missions were cancelled or rerouted. Bomber formations avoided the area entirely. The Allies gained localized air superiority without committing a single squadron. But the war didn't end. The front barely moved. Because air superiority over 30 kilometers of trench doesn't win a war that stretches across hundreds of kilometers and 4 nations. The Germans adapted fast. They moved balloon lines farther back, outside the Gripen's usual patrol radius. They switched reconnaissance flights to early morning and late evening when visibility was worst. They dispersed formations and flew lower, trading efficiency for survival. Within 2 weeks, operations outside the jet's bubble returned to normal. The shock wore off. The war continued. Here's what actually changed. Commanders on both sides learned that killing the sensor network, balloons, scouts, spotters, had more tactical impact than winning dogfights. The British and French shifted resources toward balloon-busting aircraft and anti-reconnaissance patrols. The Germans reinforced air defenses around observation units and spread their assets thinner to avoid single-point failures. Both sides started thinking about air combat as a system, not a series of duels. That shift didn't come from the Gripen's speed or missiles. It came from watching what happened when the eyes went dark. The logistics lesson was even harder. Technology creates windows, not victories. The Gripen dominated for 10 days because it had fuel, parts, and space to operate. When any one of those disappeared, the dominance ended. Modern militaries know this. That's why supply chains, maintenance crews, and fuel depots get as much planning as the aircraft themselves. Air power without logistics is a magic trick, impressive for a moment, then gone. The jet proved it could change fights quickly. But quickly isn't the same as decisively. Sustained operations need infrastructure, and infrastructure takes time to build. The crew buried the Gripen in a barn outside Arras and walked away. The engine was seized, the fuel system was clogged. The airframe was intact but useless, without parts that wouldn't exist for another 30 years. In 1918, a farmer found it, reported it to local authorities, and the French military classified the wreckage. It sat in a storage depot until 1943, when a German bombing raid destroyed the building. No one today knows where the pieces ended up. So could one modern jet fighter have quickly changed World War I air combat? Yes. For a few days, in a small area, with perfect conditions and a smart crew, it deleted sensors, broke formations, and forced both sides to rethink how they used the sky. But it didn't win the war. It didn't shift the strategic balance. And it didn't survive long enough to matter beyond a single front. Technology gives you shock. Logistics give you victory. Without both, you get a short, brilliant flash, and then nothing. If you want to see how far modern systems can really go when logistics isn't the bottleneck, hit subscribe. The next one's waiting.